Hello, my chicklets. Thank you for stopping by. This is another sadder story that does come with some warnings, so make sure to check those out in the description. I promise that next week's story is going to be soft and cute and fluffy to help make up for these past two stories. Before we jump into the reading, I do have a challenge for all of you. Wherever you find your artwork, whether it be DeviantArt, Tumblr, or even out in the real world, I want you to try and find your favorite artist and send them a message about why you enjoy their art so much. Let them know what their art has meant to you. I'm just hoping we can spread a bit of kindness. Without further ado, let me read Wake Up Again. The morning air was calm and quiet. Soft summer rays were floating through Logan's window, warming up the room slowly. For all intents and purposes, it was a perfect morning, yet Logan was not warm. A cold pain had gripped his chest, and he looked up at the ceiling, staring at the unchanging stucco on its surface. It was the same as it had been the morning before. Logan wasn't supposed to have seen this ceiling again. He wasn't supposed to have waken up. Pushing himself out of bed, his arms trembled, but he ignored it. There was really no point in indulging in the pain he had caused. Obviously, his experiment had been a failure. His eyes slowly roamed the bed. Everything was blurry, but he could still tell the room was exactly how he left it. Pristine, except for his bed. He rubbed his eyes, pushing away the lingering panic that had set itself in his heart until it was gone, just barely a whisper. Instead, he embraced the numbness, the cold left behind. He knew there was a possibility he wouldn't succeed, knew that the mind could do amazing things to heal itself, but he still didn't really expect to wake up. He wasn't the mind, just logic, just an imaginative figment to give reality to a dream. He had hoped that being a figment might let him escape, but there was no such luck. Letting out a long and slow sigh, he stood up, glasses affixed to his face as he started to go about his day. He had woken up against his will, but he wasn't going to make it anyone else's problem. He snapped his fingers, disappearing the red-soaked sheets and replacing them with something darker, something that wouldn't show the mess next time. He should have thought about that previously. Logan stepped toward his personal shower, each movement like a marionette being led by its strings. Even the water didn't feel like anything. He knew he had set the temperature to cold, but it didn't penetrate the chill in his skin. That was fine. It would make everything that happened easier. He preferred numb to the screaming inside his own head. The quiet was something. Maybe peaceful? Or it might have been at one time? Logan wasn't sure. He also didn't care. Stepping out of the shower, he dried his hair, fingers working purely on muscle memory. When he finally looked at himself in the mirror, he was already dressed, tie affixed as it always was like a noose around his neck. He turned from the mirror without a second glance, stepping into his bedroom and standing amongst the quiet. It felt like chaos compared to the emptiness in his head. There were books on the shelf that he used to enjoy, scholastic trophies, and a calendar impressing on him the deadlines of the day. He didn't feel the need or the pressure to do any of it, so he walked to his bed and sat down. He wasn't sure how much time had passed when he heard the knock on the door, but the light had visibly shifted. Something had changed. "Logan, is everything okay?" Patton's voice had the edge of concern to it. Logan could recognize it from when Patton had addressed the others, the way he spoke to Roman after the wedding, trying to assure him that things would get better, the way they spoke to Virgil when their friend thought he wasn't wanted. Logan had heard that voice many times toward other people. Now that it was directed toward him, he wasn't sure how to answer. "Logan?" Soft, curious, full of worry and concern. It was easy to hear it all as it echoed through his hollowness, but none of it felt real. "I'm coming," he finally answered, pushing himself up and mechanically walking to the door. The knob twisted under his grip, and the door swung open. Logan blinked at it before turning his face to Patton with the same level of curious apathy. "Hey there, were you working yourself too hard again?" Patton asked, trying to keep a positive smile. It didn't reach his eyes. Logan had spent so long looking at each of them, hoping if he could figure out what they wanted, he could be what they needed him to be. If he played along with their games, maybe they would listen. If he was serious, and above reproach. Maybe they would listen. It was fine now. He didn't care. "It's lunchtime, and none of us have seen you all day. Normally you at least come down for some crofters." Patton was needling. There was a question he wanted to ask, but he was being indirect, trying not to hurt Logan's feelings. It was fine. He didn't have feelings. Simply lost track of time. Would it have taken them this long if he hadn't woken up? Or would the mind have known something was irreparably wrong? No, not irreparably. Logan didn't think so highly of himself, but certainly his absence would have caused a crack, a fissure, something. Patton looked at him, opening his mouth to ask a question before shaking his head and holding out his hand, offering a lifeline to Logan. He felt a pull in his heart, a twinge as he stared down at Patton's soft palm. He had longed for this. For so long he had wanted a lifeline, but not now. Not when he had finally found a way to turn it off. "Do you want to come down for lunch?" It was harder to weigh the pros and cons, but Logan knew he had been sitting in his room for several hours, if it was now lunchtime. Though they didn't necessarily need to eat, it would probably be in his best interest to put something into his stomach. He nodded, but didn't take Patton's hand. For a moment, the other man's smile faltered, eyes flicking between Logan's hand and Logan's face, but the logical side didn't move, and eventually Patton turned around to lead them both to the kitchen. Things fell back into a routine. Everything was the same, except Logan. Virgil continued to talk about his band interests, trading jabs with Roman. The prince in return would go off on tangents about future video ideas, and Patton would encourage him. There was still a palpable tension in the air, but that was also rather common. Things still weren't back to how they had been before the fallout. Occasionally Patton looked Logan's way, biting his lip, but he didn't say anything, and Logan was content with that. He was enjoying the numbness of being a ghost in his friend's peripherals. He wasn't here to give Roman advice that would be shot down. He wasn't here to discuss the effects of negative self-thought with Virgil. He was only here to put sustenance in his body and to appease Patton. Once his food was gone, he excused himself. The others fell quiet for a moment, and though he could hear the quiet whispering, he paid it no mind. Maybe once he got back to his room, he'd be able to work. If he couldn't, however, he didn't mind remaining in idle mode until he was called on again. The world could continue to move forward, but he wasn't supposed to wake up, so there wasn't a need for him to participate. As he went to turn his doorknob, his other hand was grabbed, his body pulled along by a force he couldn't control until he was looking into deep red eyes. "Nerd?" Remus asked, looking him up and down with a jerky movement that was very much like him. There was so much to him, fire, passion, a storm that Logan knew he could easily be encompassed and overwhelmed by. His grip was tight, and Logan didn't try to pull away until he felt it loosen. "Was there something you needed, Remus?" Though Logan hadn't necessarily been expecting Remus's interruption, he certainly wasn't surprised by it. This was rather normal, and he found it better to give Remus exactly what he wanted. It would bore him, and he would walk away. "Yeah, something's wrong. I can't hear your thoughts." Remus was poking and prodding at him as if he was an experiment. But Logan continued to stand still. Honestly, he barely felt it, his body mostly reacting on instinct when Remus stabbed him in the side with one of his nails. The only thing that lingered was a curious stinging in the back of Logan's mind, a question he asked without truly thinking about it. "Is that something you can normally do?" "Intrusive thoughts, and just about everyone has them, even if they are just little ones. But you sound blank, and your eyes look glossy." He got far too close, into Logan's personal space, barely a breath away. Logan didn't flinch. "I'm not certain why," he said, and he thought he was being honest, but Janice appeared in the shadows next to him. There was a brief silence between the three of them as the deceitful side looked him over. "That was a lie," he said, taking a step closer. He gently took Logan's chin, holding it still so that he could look into Logan's eyes. For the first time since he woke up, Logan felt the icy grip of fear pull at him, causing his body to shiver as he stepped away from Janice. He couldn't get far, his back against his own door. He hoped that would be it, not wanting his numbness to crumple in front of anyone else. He'd been enjoying it. He'd been thankful not to feel. "What happened?" Janice asked, trapping Logan so he couldn't step away. He didn't want to answer. He didn't need anyone to know, but Janice's eyes were piercing. Logan didn't know it was possible to freeze from fear and burn from shame at the same time. Even more, he wanted to disappear. "I woke up," he whispered, voice quiet as he searched for his door handle. Janice and Remus were both staring now, and Logan could feel the question falling off them. Despite the echoes of pain now loudly screaming in his mind, the terror of finally being known only for it to be his worst. Logan straightened his shoulders. They were both asking the same question, and what more did he have to lose? "I woke up, and I wasn't supposed to." The other two froze as they seemed to process what they had heard, fear filling both of them as they looked at one another. Logan took this as his opportunity, turning his doorknob and sliding inside. The numbness was gone, replaced with everything he had been fighting to ignore. It was overwhelming. It was too much for him to bear. Logan sat down on his bed before falling over, curling up tightly on his new sheets. He could hear the pounding on his door, but he ignored it. He ignored everything he could. There was work to be done, still sitting on his desk where it had been left last night, where it had been left this morning. It would still be there tomorrow. Logan curled up, closing his eyes tightly as if it might protect him from the noise inside his head. He just wanted to sleep again. He wanted to disappear. He knew it wouldn't work. He'd already tried that. Maybe tomorrow he could pretend to function as a normal human being. Maybe tomorrow, numb wouldn't be better than existing. Or maybe tomorrow, he wouldn't wake up. Thank you all for listening. Again, that story was Wake Up Again. I do hope you all enjoyed it. Please make sure to take care of yourself. As I promised, next week will be a happy story. And I hope you all have a wonderful day.